I acted like a poor and naive mother. When I met my daughter-in-law's family, it turned out that fate had written a lesson in silence, a lesson that would unfold slowly, like the dawn after a long storm. That morning, I stood before my old mirror, whose glass was cracked, yet still showed my reflection clearly. I tied my gray hair back and told myself that no one could hide the truth of their heart beneath fine clothes. My son had called the night before, his voice trembling with excitement as he told me, "Mother, I have found the woman I want to marry. She is from a good family, they live in the city, and I want you to meet them." I smiled even though my chest ached with both joy and fear. I had raised my son alone after his father passed away years ago, and I had seen every season of struggle, the hunger, the rain, the nights of prayer. When I asked only for his future to be brighter than mine, he had studied hard, worked harder, and climbed into a world where I could not follow, one built of glass towers and golden lights. I was proud, yet quietly afraid that his new world would look at me and see nothing but my poverty. When he told me his future in-laws wished to meet me, I felt the old heartbeat of hesitation. I owned nothing grand, no jewelry, no silk, just a heart full of love and a faith that never left me. I said to him, "Let them see me as I am. If their hearts are true, they will see the woman who raised you, not the clothes I wear." He wanted me to dress better, to borrow something elegant from a neighbor, but I shook my head. I have always believed that truth does not need to hide. That same evening, I polished my old sandals and packed a small bag with a gift of homemade sweets wrapped in a white cloth. I stepped into the city lights with my son, who held my hand gently as though protecting me from his own world. When we entered the restaurant, I could hear laughter, music, the soft clinking of silver plates. Her family was already there. Her mother, beautiful, proud, perfectly dressed. Her father, tall, with eyes that scanned everything like a judge. And she, my future daughter-in-law, radiant but nervous. When I greeted them, her mother smiled, a thin, practiced smile, and said, "How wonderful to finally meet you. Your son has told us so much." I bowed slightly and said, "Thank you for welcoming me." Her eyes looked at my worn clothes, my simple sandals, and though her lips smiled, her gaze spoke of distance. My son noticed it too. His hand tightened on mine under the table. I whispered to him softly, "It is all right, child. The heart of a mother is strong enough for any judgment." The dinner began with polite conversation. They spoke of travel and business and all the grand things that money can buy. I listened and nodded, sometimes answering with small stories from our small town, from my garden, from the school where I had cleaned floors for many years. They listened with half smiles, polite but empty. Her mother asked, "Do you live alone?" And I said yes, since my husband passed away many years ago. Her eyes softened for a moment, then returned to their quiet pride. Her father asked, "What do you do to keep yourself busy?" And I said, "I grow flowers and faith." They both laughed politely, not unkindly, but without understanding. I did not mind. I knew their world was made of surfaces, but love must live beyond surfaces. After dinner, her daughter walked me to the car and whispered, "I am sorry for my parents. They can be proud, but they will come to love you." I smiled at her and said, "My dear, love is not measured in apologies, but in time. Give them time." She nodded and hugged me. Her warmth was real, and I saw that her heart was gentle. My son was quiet all the way home. I asked him, "What troubles you?" And he said, "I am afraid they will not accept us because of the difference." I said, "Then let love fight for its place. Do not let fear lead your heart." A few days later, her parents invited me again, this time to their home. I sensed they wanted to see more, to test me. I decided I would go exactly as I was. I took with me a small box that held my husband's old watch and our only family photograph. When I arrived, their house shone like a palace, tall white walls, flowers arranged by hands that never knew dust. Her mother greeted me with that same polite smile. Her father nodded. I sat down on the edge of a shining sofa and placed the box before them. I said, "This is a small gift from my heart." They opened it. Her mother looked at the picture, my son, a small boy holding my hand in front of our old house. She said softly, "You must be proud of him." I said, "More than proud, for he is my prayer answered." She looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flicker of respect in her eyes. She said, "He has achieved much in life and will give our daughter every comfort." I smiled and said, "Yes, but comfort is not always found in things. Sometimes it is found in the arms of love." She looked away, unable to reply. Their daughter brought tea and whispered again, "Please do not think badly of them. They only know one way to see the world." I touched her hand and said, "My dear, love is not measured in apologies, but in time. Give them time." She nodded and hugged me. Her warmth was real, and I saw that her heart was gentle. My son was quiet all the way home. I asked him, "What troubles you?" And he said, "I am afraid they will not accept us because of the difference." I said, "Then let love fight for its place. Do not let fear lead your heart." A few days later, her parents invited me again, this time to their home. I sensed they wanted to see more, to test me. I decided I would go exactly as I was. I took with me a small box that held my husband's old watch and our only family photograph. When I arrived, their house shone like a palace, tall white walls, flowers arranged by hands that never knew dust. Her mother greeted me with that same polite smile. Her father nodded. I sat down on the edge of a shining sofa and placed the box before them. I said, "This is a small gift from my heart." They opened it. Her mother looked at the picture, my son, a small boy holding my hand in front of our old house. She said softly, "You must be proud of him." I said, "More than proud, for he is my prayer answered." She looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flicker of respect in her eyes. She said, "He has achieved much in life and will give our daughter every—" I understand hearts change slowly, like winter turning to spring. When I left their house that evening, the wind was cold, but I felt warmth in my soul. I had not defended myself. I had only shown them who I was, and that was enough. Days turned into weeks. The wedding was planned. Her parents spared no expense. Gold lights, music, dresses so bright they could blind the stars. I wore my simple sari, pale blue, faded at the edges, and I sat quietly watching my son and his bride take their vows under the lights. Everyone smiled, but I could feel their whispers. "She is so simple, so plain. How strange it must look beside such grandeur." Yet my son looked at me once during the ceremony, his eyes full of tears, and I nodded to him that everything was right. Love had found its place. After the wedding, they moved to a new apartment, gifted by her parents. I returned to my small house, surrounded by the whispering of trees and the sound of the old clock that had never stopped ticking. I missed him deeply, but I told myself that this was the circle of life. Parents raise wings so they can fly away. Months passed. Sometimes he called, sometimes she did, sometimes there was silence. One night, my phone rang. It was my son, his voice heavy. He said, "Mother, we fought today. Her parents said things about you, and she repeated them." I felt my heart tighten, but I said gently, "My son, do not let anger guide your tongue. Forgive her. She is learning between two worlds." He said, "I cannot stand when they insult you." I said, "Then show them love, not war, for love breaks walls better than pride." The next morning, he called again and said, "Mother, please come, help us understand each other." I went to their home. She opened the door, her eyes swollen from crying. She said, "Mother, I am so ashamed." I said, "No, child, do not be ashamed. We all speak with borrowed voices sometimes. but the heart must learn to speak its own truth. She hugged me and cried. I held her and said, "Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the only strength that never ends." Her parents came later that week. They wanted to talk. I went again. They looked softer, quieter. Her mother said, "I owe you an apology. I judged you wrongly. I thought wealth was proof of worth, but you have shown me something deeper." I said, "Peace does not need proof. It only needs love." She said, "My daughter has changed since marrying your son. She smiles more, she speaks with humility." I said, "That is what happens when love is allowed to breathe. Pride suffocates it. Forgiveness keeps it alive." Her father, who had been silent, said, "You are a remarkable woman." I bowed my head and said, "I am just a mother who never stopped believing that kindness will return like a river finds its sea." From that day, the distance between our worlds began to fade. They visited my small house for the first time, bringing fruit and gifts. Their daughter held my hand and said, "I wanted them to see where love lives." When they stepped inside, they were quiet at first, taking in the cracked walls, the simple table, the small garden filled with marigolds. Her mother said, "It smells like peace here." I said, "It smells like memory and prayer." She smiled truly. Her father walked around and said, "I spent my life building big things, but never built something that felt alive like this house." I said, "A home breathes only when hearts forgive each other." They stayed for tea and I cooked simple rice and lentils. Her mother said, "I have eaten in palaces, but nothing has ever tasted like this." I said, "Maybe because it was cooked with peace, not fire." From that day on, they came often, sometimes helping me in the garden, sometimes sitting quietly in the shade. Her father repaired my old fence, her mother brought seeds and said, "Let us plant new life together." And in those small acts, pride melted like snow. My son and his wife grew stronger together. Their laughter filled both homes. And soon, one evening, they brought news that filled every heart with light. They said, "We are going to have a baby." I placed my... She was sleeping, wrapped in white, her tiny fingers curling like petals. Her mother wept with joy. Her grandparents stood nearby, and for the first time they called me sister, not with words, but with the way they held my hands together. In that hospital room, I saw how forgiveness had turned strangers into family. Years passed softly like rain. The child grew between two homes, one of wealth and one of simplicity, yet never torn, for she was raised on stories of both. She loved my garden and the grand house equally. Sometimes she would run to me and say, "Grandmother, tell me how you met Mama's family." I would smile and say, "It began when I pretended to be poor so they could see what true wealth was." Her mother would listen, her eyes full of love, and say, "You taught us to see." I would laugh softly and say, "No, my child, you taught yourself." Love only needed a mirror. Time moved gently. My hair turned white. My hands trembled, but my heart was light. My son and his wife built a home full of laughter, not gold. Her parents visited often, bringing flowers instead of jewels. Their friendship became the thread that tied all of us together. One evening, as the sun set, her father said, "You changed us without ever raising your voice." Her mother added, "You showed us that forgiveness is not surrender, it is strength." My son took my hand and said, "You are the reason we know what love means." And my daughter-in-law said, "You are the heart of this family." When I grew weaker and spent my days in the garden watching the flowers sway in the wind, the little girl would sit beside me and read stories. Sometimes she would say, "Grandmother, what is forgiveness?" And I would answer, "Forgiveness is when your heart chooses peace, even when pain asks for revenge." She would smile and say, "Then you must have a big heart." I would laugh and say, maybe only big enough to hold all of you.